Hello, my name is Alex Merced, and this is a video for Ask a Libertarian. And in this week's video, what we're going to do is talk about the advantages of privatizing government programs. Bottom line is, the reason why you'd want to privatize, or I would say introduce market forces into anything, is because market forces, basically the nature of individuals competing and cooperating, because that's what a market is. Individuals get together and cooperate, that's a business, but those groups of cooperating individuals compete against other groups, and whichever group figures out the best way to cooperate wins, in a sense. So you find better ways to cooperate. And that's one of the best things about introducing market forces. That competition allows us to cooperate better. That's innovation. But at the same time, it also allows us to introduce new efficiencies, which means lower prices. So lower prices, innovation, these benefit everybody. Because productivity, efficiency, is not just about, oh, good, we use less stuff, things are cheaper. But it also means if you use less stuff, there's more stuff for more people. This is the reason why the population is multitudes the times of 100 years ago, yet a smaller percentage of people are starving or are subject to daily violence than ever before. So it's because of increases in productivity. So increases in productivity, increases in efficiency, innovation, lower prices, those are the benefits of privatization. The question is, how do you do it? There's a lot of different ways that you start introducing market incentives into government programs. Sort of the softest way of doing it is what's called a public-private partnership. I'm personally not the hugest fan of these methods, but again, if you're comparing it to your only other option is the purely government-run method, it's still sometimes somewhat better. And what a public-private partnership does is what you do is you take a public asset like a school or a park, and you put it up to bids through private actors, and they win a contract for a period of term, and then they're supposed to sort of do well. And if they don't do well at the cost that they, put in their quote, then it's going to go back up and be auctioned off again to have somebody else put in charge. So that puts pressure for that private operator to figure out how to optimize the running of that school, the running of that park. So like charter schools are kind of like a private-public partnership. Another way of doing this is through government payment. In a sense where basically you allow people to choose private providers, but with the government pay as a payer. And the reason why this is an option is because one of the concerns you always have about full outright privatization, which I will get to, is that, well, I mean, middle class and upper class people will be able to, go into the market and find a solution that they can afford. But the poorest, the people who need it the most, won't be able to find a solution for them because they don't have the resources to pay. So imagine that you had a school district where the government just said, you know what, everyone goes to a private school, but the government will pay. So basically the government's going to pay a flat, let's say $6,000 per student every year. You can take them to any private school you want, any kind of education institution you want. So then what would happen? You'd have a huge boom in people trying to figure out how to cater to that new market. You'd have higher end markets where basically people would get their $6,000 from the government, but the parents would pay maybe a little extra, a higher end sort of private schools. But then you'd have people who optimize a private school at that $6,000 price point to give the best education possible because they're competing against other schools at that $6,000 price point for kids of all socioeconomic levels. But bottom line is competition will lead to an optimization of what can you get out of, let's say, that $6,000 per student, which is actually would be a lot lower than the cost per student for a lot of school districts for a lot less results. Now, the third option is just outright privatization. Now, outright privatization just means you get the government out of it, you give people back the tax money that would normally be spent on that, and say, go find someone to buy it from. Now, by doing this, you have a pure market incentive, and you're going to have all the benefits of a free market, but people's concerns is what happens to that very low end? What happens to the people who are poor? Now, there's a lot of different things that could happen to that lower end. People will have an incentive to try to find a way to provide for that end of the market because there's still money to be made. even if it's basically you just have to figure out a much lower cost structure to provide that, which means you do it through scale, or what you do is you find a third-party payer. So what you do is you get together with maybe 2 or 3 different charitable different organizations to help pay for the school, or you might even have schooling provided by charitable organizations like existed in the past. And still happens a lot in other nations. Actually, there's a great TED Talk about how private schools are really benefiting a lot of people in Africa. And these are actually like the poorest people. They're providing them an education that just other institutions aren't. So there's a lot of different ways. You could actually have community schooling, homeschooling. People could just go online through Khan Academy, and maybe parents hire sort of facilitator to help guide them through using Khan Academy and help them through the learning process. Or maybe some students are just bright and they're able to just go through the Khan Academy program online themselves and just absorb it. There's a bajillion different possibilities. No 2 kids learn alike, and the same logic can be applied to post office, roads, etc. There's diversity in purely private market solutions because there's no one way of doing it. And that's the problem with a lot of people when they're trying to imagine a private market for something that doesn't exist at the moment. It's because they're trying to imagine that market working the way things work now. Okay? Yes, if you want a private market and for schools and expect that schools are going to work exactly the way they work now, then that might be a tough sell. But why should it work the way it works now? Is the way it works now really the way it should work? Can't there be something better? That's the benefit of markets. You can discover if there's something better. So, bottom line, there are ways to privatize things, and it's to everyone's advantage to do so. My name is Alex Merced. This is a video for Ask a Libertarian. Have a great day and enjoy.